I'll introduce Jessica. I'm David Gregory. I'm the solid waste manager for Orange County, and I've been in that position, gosh, maybe 6 months at this point. And Jessica has a relatively new position with Orange County. She's worked with us in recycling for a couple of years, been our recycling coordinator. And as she will discuss, there's certain issues with recycling, and we have realized as an organization that we need to improve what we collect at the curbside, and Jessica is in charge of that program. And I know she's a proud graduate of University of Central Florida. So, and with that, I'll let her run this program.
Cool. 1 second. So how do you click the next one?
I think it's the one on the right.
Where do you point it?
Oh,
Probably at the computer.
maybe
It's going ding.
hold on. There you go.
Yay! Okay. Yeah, so I'm here to talk about recycling in Orange County. That's both, residential and commercial. We're here to talk about. So with our residential recycling, you've probably seen them around town. It's the big 95-gallon blue and green lid recycle roll carts. The blue is for recycling and the green is for garbage. So we service over 215,000 homes in unincorporated Orange County. So those are single family homes. The residential program does not cover multifamily homes or, of course, businesses. The whole county is divided into 5 zones, which are serviced by 3 franchise haulers. That's FCC, Waste Pro, and Advanced Disposal. And recycling is picked up once a week in those 95-gallon carts. And those recyclables are brought to basically what used to be our MRF as a transfer station.
And MRF means?
Materials recovery facility. So that's where recycling goes and it gets sorted, all the cans, all the bottles, all the paper together. So that way it can be shipped out for manufacturing. And our facility is no longer running. So the recyclables collected by our franchise haulers now get sent to MRFs outside of the county. So that's just a brief overview of the residential recycling. So with commercial, it's a free market. So we don't collect that. We don't tell you, who collects what from the businesses. Recycling is mandatory according to Orange County Code for every business, every multifamily complex in unincorporated Orange County, but it's not exactly enforced. And we also have a list of registered recyclers on our website so that if someone does want to set up a recycling program, they have a list of licensed recyclers who can go and haul that material. So recycling started all the way back in 1990, and the MRF opened the same year. So it was dual stream collection. So you had your bin for fibers, and then you had your bin for the plastic and the glass. And it was low contamination. We really, I don't think, ever had a load rejected before when we had the dual stream. Because you can see right there, if there's something funky sticking in it, they put a tire in there. You can see that doesn't belong. So it was low contamination. And then 2016, we switched to single stream collection, and that is the trend, across the country. So basically, all of that material now goes in one cart. There's no more sorting. So it is more convenient for residents. It even says on the top exactly what to put in the recycling cart. So the tons collected double to 5,000 tons per month, which is great, but a lot of the material was also contamination. So contamination is really just anything that we do not accept in the program. It's basically anything that you don't see in those 2 bins right there. Because we only take 5 materials, the plastic, metal, and glass containers, as well as paper and cardboard, and that is it. So anything else like clothing, shoes, a pen, anything.
Garden hoses.
Yeah, garden hoses. Anything you can imagine that you can put in the recycling cart. You don't want to put it in there. You just want those 5 materials. So that did lead to high contamination. So we had a contract with Waste Management for many years. I think since like the MRF opened. Yeah, since 1990. And that contract did come to an end. And at that point as well, that equipment had reached the end of its useful life pretty much. It was, really expensive to run and all of that. It hadn't had a big upgrade in a few years. So that facility is now serving as a transfer station. So material collected from the Orange County residents gets dumped there and then loaded into another truck, which is brought to MRFs throughout Florida. So you can see here the tons of recyclables collected increased a lot. But you can also see the rejected loads kind of like shoot up right when we handed out those carts.
Eek.
So it's a pretty dramatic change, and it's higher than the contamination is higher than 15% in most zones. And on top of that, so while we're getting more contaminated material, the value ton of recyclables is also going down. So like I said, that material is sorted, it's crushed into bales, and it's sold. And you can see how for all the commodities, pretty much the average has gone down significantly. So there's low value for recyclables right now, and the market does fluctuate, but it's pretty much at an all-time low lately. So you can see specifically for aluminum, how it fluctuates and it's down. And then you can see for PET and HDPE plastic. And then for all the other commodities, mixed paper, cardboard, your cans, glass. So you can see how mostly it's a downward trend for all the different materials. So we have a problem here. We have high contamination and we have the low market value for recyclables. So one big exciting thing happening right now is the community, the region of Orlando is really trying to come together and bring basically all the different stakeholders together to resolve this issue. So Beyond 34, which was started by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, their goal is basically to bring us all together to help create a circular economy. So that means all the materials that are generated here, they're sorted here, they're remanufactured here, and they're back on store shelves, or however they're manifested right here locally. So they did a study that found that there's $92 million in direct economic opportunity by keeping all of those recyclables that are out there out of our landfill. And of course, new jobs and all of that. So you can see there's all these different components that basically have to come together. So you can see they have like their best practices. We have to have, the collection, the processing, the end markets, the policies, and the education all has to fit together. Like one simple example of that is educational materials. If we're all sending our materials to the same MRF, then all of our education should be the same. And it's just confusing for people. So that's just one simple example of like how it all needs to work together. So here in Orange County, one of our major goals right now is to clean up the residential recycling stream. And we've had our Think 5 campaign for a while. Again, that's trying to simplify the message for residents because recycling is confusing. I mean, I worked here for 4 years and I'm still confused about what exactly can be recycled sometimes. So we're trying to simplify the message by saying, just the plastic, metal cans, glass bottles and jars, cardboard and paper in the recycling cart, that is it. But we realized you can throw, as many messages as you want at people. You could stick it on the cart, you could send them newsletters, you could send them flyers, you can send everything. But to really make an impact, we knew we had to put boots on the ground. And following the Recycling Partnership, which is a nonprofit organization like dedicated to helping solving curbside contamination, we actually went out there in the field, looked inside recycling carts, and tagged them if we saw contamination. So it was an 8-week pilot, and we used 643 homes in a subdivision. And this area we chose because it was considered to be, it had potential. Their loads weren't totally contaminated. We thought, hey, we can get these loads accepted. So our goals were, of course, to find out about their recycling habits. How often are they setting out their recycle carts? Are the cart tags going to work? So basically what we said was we have these 3 different tags. Great job if your recycling is 100% perfect. Good try if it's if you got like a few items in there, looks like you made some effort. And then an oops tag if it was clear that material was no good. And it was just a quick visual inspection. They were assigned a tag, and the results were that we believe it did make an impact. So we got 2 loads accepted during that pilot. So the next step is to take the lessons that we learned, which were plenty from that pilot, and test it out in another area. So you can see here the impact that it made. The red line. We also tracked the contamination, so how much of each type of the main items: plastic bags, we call stringy things, hoses, wires, styrofoam, yuck, which are like foods and liquids, clothing, wood, hazardous waste. So you can see plastic bags, of course, were the #1 contaminant, and that did decrease over time throughout the length of the program. And another important thing I forgot to mention is the tags also had consequences. So if a household got so many of the oops tags, so the really contaminated carts, they got their cart turned around and it wasn't going to be picked up from the hauler. So there was a sort of like consequence to not recycling properly. And you can see over time the oops tags decreased, and then the great job tags went up. So actually recently just concluded a composition study to take a look at, so what does that stream look like, because our pilot route, of course, was just like only a little snapshot of what's in there. So we took samples from each of the 5 zones, and that'll be used to better help us assess, what's in the recycling stream.
That picture would be really cool to blow it up and say what doesn't belong here, like a Sesame Street, kind of thing,
We took pictures of every single load that was part of the pilot program, and so you can even see like a laundry hamper basket, and which is not that surprising because you always think it's plastic.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't it go into the recycling cart?
Chip bags and
It was incredible, but
Yeah, I'm up to 8 items that aren't recycled.
yeah.
Right.
Anybody else up there?
So with this composition study, we hope that it'll help, or it will help with a potential new MRF. So right now they're evaluating the facility and the equipment to see if it's still possible to use, and that's going to help with the development of an RFP for a possible new MRF. Because there is definitely a need in this region. There is no local MRF right now. So again, a MRF is, where the recycling is sorted and processed to be sold and shipped out. So this will most likely be a public-private partnership, which of course has to go through the Board of County Commissioners, and David could talk a lot more about that. And like I said, we're conducting another phase of the pilot. And some exciting news is we're also getting funding to help fund our cart tagging program. So we want to take that cart tagging program county-wide and really get that contamination to not be as much of an issue anymore. And that'll, of course, also help with getting a new MRF here. So I'll let David fill in.
Sure.
Any gaps.
Our last slide?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, okay.
Any questions? I feel like I just threw up information everywhere. Yeah.
With the recycling contamination study, how do you track the same house address? Do you guys have any kind of technology that you're using, or was it all paper kind of addresses?
For the pilot?
Yeah, for the
Yeah, we basically isolated those 643 homes, and then we visited them each week for 8 weeks.
Okay.
And we had a paper spreadsheet,
Yes.
a paper tracking sheet that we used to document, each that address, what was in the cart each time, whether it was acceptable, et cetera. But we have had some conversations with the recycling partnership, worked with a company called Rubicon, and they have developed a handheld app. And so we're actually going to talk with them next week about, us testing that app out as we move forward.
Yeah.
Who covers the cost of recycling besides whatever we pay? The county, the state, the city, MVP, I mean, is there gonna be a huge cost in the whole process? So where's the money coming from?
It's funded through the MSBU,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah.
For our residential program, it's funded by the residential households. The household is part of the annual assessment you pay in unincorporated Orange County for garbage collection service, and in the city, it's part of the monthly bill as that. On the commercial side, it's got to be funded by whatever the price you pay to the collector for that service. There are, and the processing fee and the processing of recyclables has a couple of components. One component being the cost for collection, which is net cost. There's a cost for processing, for owning and operating and maintaining that equipment and sorting it. Then there is some revenue on the backside related to the sale of the commodities. But it's the same person that pays for everything. Somebody pays for it, and in the case of the residential recycling, in our case, it's the customer pays.
How did a new MRF impact commercial businesses?
It would provide them a place to deliver materials to kind of provide some, some context. I know Orange County recently went out with its facilities contract for collection of recyclables. Of course, we have buildings just like many other folks do. And that was the principal comment we got back is there's very few places that will accept recyclables. And then on top of it, contamination is a huge issue because of the ability of a processor to bring that material in and then make a bale to sell it. But having a local processing facility would really open up some opportunities. It would give a place where material could be delivered to, and that's part of what Orange County will be working on next year as a very high priority, is trying to put together a package to attract folks to site a facility. They could either, what we're thinking at this point would be to either use our existing facility and upgrade it, or maybe possibly upgrade it, use it for a short period of time while a new facility gets developed. We've had a lot of interest from different processors, and also interest from like trade associations that represent the people to take off that materials, glass manufacturers, plastic manufacturers. And so there's a lot of interest in that. But the idea is if we can encourage someone to come and build a MRF, and we're looking at long-term public-private partnership, the county in association with its municipalities and the cities, to try to say, okay, we've got so many tons available, and we can provide kind of a base load for a new recycling facility to come in. Then that facility could go out and enter the market and try to get commercial tons to support it. So again, a new MRF would then provide the processing for the residential residential collection activities on our side, and then also the commercial collection activities that would be, as Jessica mentioned, much more of a free market. The state statutes do not allow the local governments to direct where commercial recyclables are picked up and delivered to, so that has to be a free market. But again, having that facility will help create markets where material can be delivered to.
On the ultimate goal, I think, of all of these ordinances and the Beyond 34 initiative and the county's programs and the recycling partnership is to get good quality recyclables that can be used as a raw material somewhere else, because right now it's just kind of not the quality that has a good marketable value. So, that I think is what everybody should kind of keep their eye on. That prize is good recyclables.
Yeah,
quality.
I did a quick back of the envelope estimate how many tons of aluminum cans get thrown away every year. And if we could just capture all of the aluminum cans, that would generate over $8 or $9 million in revenue just from the sale of that commodity that could conceivably pay for our recycling program for the year. So the idea is by working to tell people kind of what is supposed to be put in that cart, the idea is not only will we reduce the contamination, but we'll also increase the awareness about what can be recycled and what should go in that cart, which is pretty cool.
So, can I ask?
Are you still being, I mean, are you affected by the issues with China?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, that's a key point is, gosh, I guess in about the spring or maybe even late last year, China announced its national sword, where they indicated that they will no longer take in certain commodities from the U.S. like mixed plastic or essentially like garbage that's getting sorted out. And you know, think about it. They required that for a bale of, say, aluminum cans or HDPE plastic to be accepted into China, that the maximum contamination allowable in a bale, you know, bale is they take it, we sort out all this material. You got a bunch of plastic, and they crunch it into these cubic yard bales, and then they in that bale to be accepted into China, if they even accept anything, has to be 0.5% of contamination. And we start out at 30%, and they've got to try to run it through these conveyor belts and sort it out to get it down to 0.5%. Real tall order. The advantage we have here in the Southeast is a lot of our plastic doesn't have to go to China; it can go to other places. And also we have a bunch of ports, but it's not only the U.S. affected; it's worldwide because a lot of material out of like Europe goes to China for processing. So that's a big challenge. But yes, China does impact it. And you saw also the price of a mixed paper bale just plummeting. That's really the impact of China and the national sword.
So, I want to go back to the contamination. Have you started thinking about also with the new MER coming up with a way to consolidate or combine everybody's what's acceptable so that there's still so much confusion when, we're the school district, we're now using Recollect, and we have started to see a lot of really good data coming back on searches of people trying to figure out what can and cannot be recycled, and we're finding that very helpful to reduce our contamination risks.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also talk, so if you live in the city of Orlando, it's different than when you live in Orange County, but then if you recycle at a school, it may be different also. So we still have 3 different sets of sources of what is acceptable recycling.
But actually, it's if there's only a handful of recycling facilities in the state, so it's really the same material. It's acceptable, if it's going to a sorting facility, because there are, plastic bags are highly recyclable. If you take them back to the grocery store and you put them in the bin at the grocery store. But your point is well taken. The cities and the counties, we meet quarterly and we share ideas to try to homogenize and normalize our conversations. So that's really part of it. And I know that the city of Orlando has taken on, as you have making use of the mobile app to advise folks, getting a lot of information, and several of the other cities are also doing that. So, and as we move forward, one of the things that the county has, which is exciting, is we have a new mayor and 3 new commissioners, and we think that there's a lot of interest in some of these sustainability issues and some of these new ideas. So they're great opportunities right now moving forward.
Well, and on the commercial side, you get certain organizations, like a big, Siemens had lots and lots and lots of wood from crates that come in. Well, they were able to find somebody who would recycle those. So, on the commercial side, they get some different recyclables that can be, sourced somewhere else. So it's just hard, sometimes to talk about, the commercial recycling aspect versus residential. And we argue about this at home, whether, but I think the messages should be somewhat separate, where you're talking to the commercial, group to help them figure out what can they recycle. If you get 1 million pallets at your warehouse, all that film you're pulling off, if you set that aside, if you've got the space for it, that's money. That's some good money. If it's nice, clean, film. There's certain things that are good recyclables, but you don't want it in the residential stream at all. And then the other thing is there's the list of all the different commercial recyclers that are approved to work in this area. And if you call them up and ask them, what do you accept? You'll get a different answer if you call that same company, 3 times in the same month. I mean, because they're not even sure. Like the brochures aren't even always up to date. Some of them will say they take, polystyrene, but they don't, So
And it depends on.
they're
on the
having a hard
markets.
time keeping up with it too.
Yeah.
So
It depends too, like as was mentioned with China, is what are the markets doing? Because each one of these is a commodities. It's just like gold or silver, and it can be more or less valuable depending on what the demands of the marketplace are. But your point is well taken. There's a whole lot of recycling. Most recycling is not curbside. Most recycling is not what you put in that would go to a recycling facility. Most recycling occurs in the United States through separate channels. I mean, there's a whole channel for paper, or there's a whole channel for metals, there's a whole channel for all these other materials, for plastics that never move through the residential stream. So it is different from a commercial side to the residential side. Of course, like the schools are a lot more similar to a resident, but it's different. There are some differences.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've got some of our own, separate streams that go outside, but our single stream really falls
Right.
pretty much like a residential.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
and
if you're able to keep it segregated, you can make money on it more than,
Yeah, but the single stream, and again, in support of that idea, the state of Florida has a program called Rethink, Reset, Recycle, and the idea is to just promote those things that should go into the cart. As I said, here in the state of Florida, only 20% of aluminum cans make it back into the recycle stream. The rest gets thrown in the garbage. And if we can get those out of the garbage and into the recycle stream, that's a valuable commodity that can help pay for these programs.
90 days.
90 days.
That beer you drink on Halloween is like back on the shelf
Yeah.
by, New Year's
Christmas.
Eve, right?
Yeah, only if you put it back in the bin though.
Yeah.
Yeah, for commercial entities like Lockheed Martin, I think you'd be pretty excited to something about like a local.
Mm-hmm.
You should be involved in Beyond 34. I mean, I think Lockheed would be a good
So we
member of
we set our sustainability goals for 2020, but we've already met them. So we were resetting them for basically the whole corporation, not just the local businesses. And the drive is to go. It's lofty, even though our Sand Lake site is meeting it already. Is 0% waste to landfill. We're doing co-vantage, so we get energy recovery. So anything that doesn't go to landfill, we get credit for it. But with that, we're required to recycle. Lockheed Martin, we set our own metrics, but we're required to recycle. So we spend a lot of money doing that. So if there's not a local option, it's going somewhere else at our expense.
Mm-hmm.
So having local options is something we would certainly be happy to see.
But and Lockheed Martin is not alone as far as having sustainability goals. Any Fortune 500 company has sustainability goals, has a sustainability report. Many of them have the zero landfill or some percentage of not to landfill goal. So having a recycling facility here would really open up opportunities for folks that would want to even locate or relocate a facility here, support a facility here, if we can help them meet those sustainability goals. And we see that as a very important kind of a linkage here.
So just to change gears a little bit, Joe England is here from City of Orlando, and y'all are working on a commercial recycling ordinance. I was going to let you give an update on that, if you don't mind.
So, like Dan was saying, the City of Orlando has for the last year and a half been working on drafting up a commercial and multifamily requirement for recycling. Right, so this was driven by a mayor's tasking, but mainly from the residents of multifamily places, properties calling us saying, we live here, but we don't have the ability to recycle. So that both at multifamily and commercial, we saw requests coming in from our residents. So over the last year and a half, with the exception of some time to pick up debris from a hurricane, we've been conducting stakeholder engagement meetings, trying to get as much comments and concerns from the community as possible before, in order to inform the policy that we were bringing forward to council. So we're at the very, very end of this stage right now. We finally have established a draft of red line code that our legal department is okay with. So we'll be releasing that to all stakeholders that showed interest in this policy over the next couple of weeks to provide comment. And then hopefully, if the timeline holds, bringing this up to council at the beginning of the year for the first reading, and then hopefully by second reading in February to go effective 6 months after that. So February plus 6 months. Essentially, what our concept is to require multifamily properties of 4 or more units that they provide the opportunity for their residents to recycle. So that's essentially providing a space for recycling plan, recycling program, and then providing the city a verification form of sorts that we can verify and make sure that they're implementing the program. On the commercial side, it looks similar. That the commercial property provides the space for a recycling container and then implement a program and provide verification form to the city. This is being planned to be rolled out over 4 years. The first of the phase-in will be 6 months after that effective date to all new construction. So we've already been kind of putting a little bug in the ear of everybody who approaches our planning department, looking to start pulling permits or start applying for permits for new construction and significant improvements to their current property building, which is either way. So we've already been kind of giving them the heads up, hey, this is happening. Although if they have applied for a permit prior to this effective date, they will not, they're not required to apply until their particular building size meets the threshold. And I'll go over that. So that's where we're at right now. New construction for 6 months. 1 year after effective date will be all large properties. So commercial buildings, commercial spaces, 200,000 square feet or more, and multifamily properties that are 250 units or more. Next phase is 2 years from effective date, which is medium properties, 100,000 square feet or more for commercial establishments, and then 75 to that 249, to that middle threshold. And then that's 2 years after, and then we gave ourselves 2 years after that, so a full 4 years from effective date to full compliance for every other property in the city. So we anticipate that last phase in, that 4th phase in, to be a monster, because that's every restaurant, office building, or every small office, everything needing to comply. That's a lot of verification forms. So.
Yeah, so my question is, and you maybe already said it, but I missed it or whatever, because you just said a lot. But so one issue with Orange County's commercial recycling ordinances, it doesn't really define what is recycling. So if somebody is recycling only their cardboard but tossing everything else in the trash, they're technically recycling. So does yours kind of define what % of their waste stream has to be recycled, or because if you're recycling something, only aluminum, you're still recycling. Right. Even though you're throwing all your cardboard away, right? Correct. Which, you can't enforce somebody if they're recycling. Right. At least they're doing something.
So we're not intending to be the recycling police. We don't have the capacity to do something like that. So we're not requiring that percentage of the materials that are produced at that business to provide a recycling option for that part of that program. We're accepting verification forms, and until we actually start seeing it come in too, we're going to really be able to kind of figure out what that looks like. But written into our ordinance is just that, and just that focus on the opportunity, right? So we're under the impression that if a high-rise has multiple tenants in it, and they submit a verification, like a SunTrust building downtown, and they submit a verification form that says we provide the opportunity for our tenants to recycle, and they put out a 95-gallon recycling cart, that's going to be okay with us. We're going to sign off on that. We're not going to. The enforcement comes in when people start using that 95-gallon cart for the 50 businesses. That's just an estimate, but that's a way over estimate. But whatever the amount of businesses start using that one recycle cart, there's gonna be a lot of, obviously overuse and potential litter and things that we can enforce, right? Things that we do have the capacity to enforce through our garbage regulations. So that would obviously not be sufficient containers for the operations of that particular business. So that's kind of the tact we're taking with this. And we found it is a lot more easy to sell to the to the stakeholders and things if it's more of that kind of opportunity.
So you do subcontracting the whole recycling process?
So we do. The city's in a unique spot, different than what the county is, that we're a municipal waste hauler. So we actually offer a commercial recycling service, right? But we, like David was mentioning, we have to compete in that sphere. So we compete with the other 26 registered recycle haulers in the county. So we currently have a small commercial recycling business. Yep. It's about 100 to 150 commercial dumpsters out there in the city right now. But we have 9,000 customers on our that pay for garbage for us, that are on our OEC account. So we have the potential for people to recycle is out there. We're looking to obviously scale up, but we can't. The way we have an exclusivity over commercial garbage, we are restricted from state law to do that in our recycling area. So that answers your question. I'm sorry. Yeah, let me one more thing on that. So we rely on a processor, right? So we're the hauler, so we pick up that recycling and we just bring it to. We're currently taking it to TAP, which is a transfer station similar to TAP operation that Orange County's doing, but operated by Waste Connections, and that same thing. So they pretty much fill up a long haul trailer with our recyclables and mixed with other recyclables from their areas, and they haul it out to Pinellas County to be sorted at their market out there. So
yeah. So that's something, you think about it. Is our recyclables go to Cocoa Beach? They go to Lakeland. They can go to Tampa, St. Pete, and some of ours go all the way as far down south as Pembroke Pines. So that's a lot of real estate has to be covered. But Joseph, a question I had is concerning the city is with this recycling for commercial entities. You have the city's got the neat opportunity in that it provides 96-gallon carts to its residents. Will it provide those same 96-gallon carts to commercial entities, and then you can just pick it up on a recycling route, right?
That's absolutely yeah. So one of the things that when I go out and talk to businesses is that the city does offer that service, which a lot of private haulers don't offer a 96-gallon commercial recycling rate at all. We're in that kind of good position where if a business is butted up against a residential area, we just pretty much put that commercial business on that recycle route for the households, for single family households, and we pick it up on their Friday. So yeah, that's one of the, and plus the other, not to give out all of our advantages in entering into this space, but we're also really convenient, right? So if commercial businesses are using us with garbage, and private haulers know this, if they're already using us for garbage, it's a lot easier for them to say, hey, you guys offer a recycling service, cool, but you got a dumpster here, and then it's just one bill now still to them. So although our rates for recycling are half of what we charge for garbage, we're anticipating with this rollout to actually be a net loss for us when it comes to our overall program as far as revenue, because we'll lose certain customers in recycling. If everybody's recycling, less people are throwing those materials in the garbage, which we make all the money off the garbage that we did. They're going to go down in service, ideally to offset that, to put the dumpster out there and actually put the materials in that recycling can. So if we don't get that business, it's sort of like a little bit of a double loss for us. But that could kind of reinforce the importance that this program and the effort that the city's showing to kind of do this and that sort of thing.
And you kind of answered a question that I was going to ask is, do you provide recycling service outside the city limits? But if it's kind of a loss, I doubt that makes any economic sense. You do not provide service
we're not.
outside the city limits.
I'm pretty sure we're not allowed to. So I think it's against the law for us to operate outside of our jurisdiction. Oh, recycling or not, you're right.
Yeah, you can, and you can
Yeah, no,
operate
we
in
don't.
competition. You
Yeah,
just
we don't have
to-
any desire to do that. No, there's no intention outside of big old recycling.
David, are you able to tell us how much, out of how much we stick in the recycle bin is actually recycled? Like what percentage is actually fully?
If you
completed?
and all of your neighbors and everybody on that route puts only good, clean recyclables in that cart, it would all get recycled.
So the answer is there's no way to tell. You
It's
can't tell.
virtually impossible, because I don't know exactly what you're putting in that cart. Again, if folks are putting those 5 things in the cart, and everybody on the route is putting those 5 things in the cart, it's like 99% will get recycled. There is some loss for, the challenge is when you start putting things that are not recyclable in there, obviously, they're not getting recycled. It could be like we talked about, this plastic film or plastic bags, highly recyclable material, not recyclable at that MRF. Someone could put a gold watch in their recycle bin, highly recyclable, great value, not recycled at that MRF. So again, it's the things is what do people put in their MRF, but generally they are very efficient at segregating out those materials that are calibrated to sort.
So you said we have a recycling ordinance, but it's not enforced?
We require that there be commercial recycling, yes.
Commercial,
And
not
each-
residential.
Right, and each of our haulers does provide us information about who doesn't have recycling. But again, it has, again, kind of been a long-standing practice. We have a hard enough time addressing residential recycling before we start worrying about commercial recycling. But I think if we can get a coordinated system in place, watch the city be successful with its ordinance, then I think you may see changes over the years to come, particularly with change in administration and change of philosophies.
That was my next question. What does Deming say about, has he been out to the landfill? Does he say anything about the sustainability plan and recycling and how that fits together?
As part of his election and information, he was strong on sustainability. And as part of the transition, the mayor had a 37-person transition team that researched a number of items, and one of the findings was to ask, how can they make our landfill last, instead of 50 years, 100 years. And so that then one of the very first short-term goals was for the county to work and look to partner with the city of Orlando and the municipalities in putting forward this request for proposal for a new recycling facility. So that is one of the stated goals of the new mayor.
You talked about clean recycling. There's a lot of stuff about cross-contamination of people putting the wrong things in. My concern is with food contamination, not in cardboard. I know China's upset about greasy pizza boxes, but if I have a bottle of shampoo or a tuna fish can or something like that, I'm wondering whether I'm wasting water at my house cleaning that thing out before I put it in, because down the line it's going to be cleaned anyway. So I'm just as a general question, is that, am I wasting my time and my water cleaning something to put in the recyclable?
The idea is that you don't, if you got a bottle of ketchup and it's more ketchup than bottle, then it's likely not to get recycled. But if you can put some water in it, shake it up, dump it out, and then put it in a recycle bin, then I think that solves the problem of how you want to remove the gross contamination, the gross yuck.
So can I add to that? Because I know when I was living in Jacksonville as a kid, when recycling came out, they did a big thing about why they wanted people to wash their recyclables was because in Florida, we have lots of bugs and vermin and, stuff that will get into our recyclables. And they wanted people to have a good, happy experience with recycling. And that's why they asked people to wash the containers before they put them into the bin, because if it drew ants and roaches and mice and rats, they knew nobody would recycle anymore and it would never work. So, but I think that's why it started with the washing, but I don't think that it has to be super clean,
And if there's lots of roaches in the recycle cart, then I have to carry it up. So there you go.
What?
I got here late, so you may have addressed it. Commercial companies and pallets. Has there been any improvements? Oh, you knew it was coming.
I tried
You knew it
hard.
was coming.
I did try.
Any improvements on how to better manage pallet recycling? I work for a multitude of companies around the United States, and to say it's a problem is an understatement.
And it's the bromine, right? Is there the bromide that they treat the pallets
The
with?
treatment,
And
with what they treat the pallets.
so,
And I've been to places where people are just literally stacking them higher than the 150-year-old trees. And that, I mean, that's like, it just seems like that's one of our larger recycling issues that we're kind of skipping over.
And bluntly, that's not on our radar screen because we're not in the business of recycling pallets. We're focusing on cans, bottles, cardboard, et cetera. But who's to say in the longer run that might not be an issue? But we have an issue with those core materials right now for Orange County to pursue. But again, some of it is there's some things that we can do and some things we can't do, and that's not something that we do right now.
and once again, that would be one of those things that I think is more along the EPD side of the house because it's helping the commercial entities and it has nothing to do with the landfill or the, well, maybe the landfill, but not
Yeah,
the,
just the landfill, you see pallets.
yeah, but it's more of a helping the businesses with a problem. I mean, I know I tried. We just right here in Florida, we don't have the market for,
It's not just Florida,
the pallets.
Ohio, California.
So
It's insane.
you just gotta get them on Pinterest and, all those people. If you could come up with a coating you could put on those pallets so that all the Pinterest people would stay safe.
Solve that problem.
I mean, we do process woody waste and beneficially reuse it at the landfill, but it's going into the landfill because we have a whole series of materials we need to use just to keep that facility running. So we will, if they're delivered to the landfill, they will get processed and will be beneficially reused, but not necessarily recycled into something else, nor are we burning it for energy recovery.
I could have sworn I talked to that guy with, is it MSE? Who's the?
Swig Street, Gene?
No, the dudes that they have the big cup grinder and they take woody waste and I thought he said he would, no, it's I can't remember the name of it, but he said he takes pallets and they throw them in the cup grinder and he said they don't like them because they have nails in them, but that's their only limitation. So, and they mulch them.
And just bring it up because it's probably something that as we move forward, we should look at. It just seems like a waste to kill a tree, to make a pallet, to, by the way, go back into landfill.
Or just keep reusing the pallets somehow.
No, that way you'd be amazed.
But there is,
Pallets
I mean,
won't get reused. That's
like
the problem.
chip, right? And they have a whole pallet recycling and
Oh,
reuse.
cheap, they only
Oh,
take
chip.
non-treated pallets. And over 75% of the pallets are treated, arsenic. And so it just since I'm here, that's a conversation we probably should have on continuing looking at.
Sure. I mean, the recycling of the aluminum and the plastic, does anybody, I imagine all that goes back to manufacturers, right? Does anybody sell it back to them, makes any money by?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you saw the chart again that Jessica had up there, but aluminum's worth about, $1,000, $2,000 a ton. So it is sold, it is collected, it is recycled. Same with plastic. A lot of the plastics, the number ones and the number twos, the HDPE and the high density polyethylene and polyethylene terephthalate, those things, I mean, that's a high value commodity. The question is getting enough of the clean stuff. Even glass, okay? Glass, which gets demeaned as being a contaminant and not recyclable, is a recyclable commodity. If you can get enough clean glass in one place, and very often I've had conversations with some of the roadway people. The challenge of them using the roadway or using glass as part of the asphalt mix is getting a steady supply of good glass for a long enough time. So that's where, again, goes back to the benefit of having a MRF here that is looking to do the advanced separation and have a company willing to put in the optical sorters that cost $1 million a piece, to put 5 or 6 of them in a line to get clean enough material. But if it's clean enough and they can separate it, they can recycle it. It's all good stuff.
There you go. How can Metra help you guys out? Anything you can think of that you gotta
Haven't,
go?
not quite sure just yet.
Jessica? I mean, you know, if y'all think about it, we've got a newsletter that goes out to people, we've got a website, we've got our training. If you ever want to have like a facilitated, maybe a commercial recycling roundtable, something like that, I don't know. Speak
A
it,
visit to the landfill and.
do a webinar, huh?
A visit to the landfill.
Yeah, could Metra have a tour of the landfill
Bring your own bus.
in January or February? Bring your own bus. BYOB.
Yeah, I think we have
We
a
can do that.
12 passenger van, but that's what we have.
So, but anyway, if you think about it, just that's what we're here for, is to try to mostly help businesses in our area, but you know, we're happy to do whatever we can do. So, yes.
Before I moved to the south, I used to pay like 5 to 10 cents a bottle for a lot of the merchandise that I would bring home, and it definitely disciplined me to make sure it all went back.
Yeah.
How come we don't?
Roaches, ants, and bugs.
And
At the Jiffy
significant
Marts.
opposition from the bottle manufacturers and the product owners and everybody else. And that's why, you know, it's kind of that, what in, say, in the case of Canada, there's a very strong, what they call EPR, extended producer responsibility, which is you make a product, you got to put money into a fund to get it recycled. So there's a lot of recycling, and it's funded by the brand owners and the container manufacturers in many cases, and they got to put money into funds to fund it. But here in this state, and I've worked in recycling long enough that I can remember back in the late 80s and early 90s, significant opposition to bottle bills. But in states like California and Michigan and you know, Massachusetts, where they do have bottle bills, that those containers are very highly recycled, very high recycle rate, and very highly desired by the producers, because you get a good clean material back. The problem is, you know, some people will argue about the carbon footprint of that reverse distribution stream. You know, the fact that it costs you money to truck a whole bottle back someplace. So there's pros and cons to both sides, but you're not likely to see that in the state of Florida. But what you do see is folks like the plastic industry who's been contacting us and City of Orlando and trying to help us look at ways to recycle more plastics, and talking about putting money where their mouth is. Coca-Cola has an initiative where everyone, or on a you know, tonnage analysis, that an equivalent of every bottle that they sell or every can that they sell will be recycled. And so they're supporting that program, and that's why they're offering a grant to Orange County to help us clean up that recycling stream, so that they'll see these aluminum cans get recycled instead of being put into the garbage. And so, you know, again, some cases they're playing defense against those bottle bills, but the brand owners and the container manufacturers are trying to support recycling programs.
But our old bottle bills, like when we used to do that and we had the deposit, they would go back to like the minute markets and stuff. I think we would have to change it to where there was a different facility where you would take those bottles, because, you know, minute markets now sell food. They have kitchens, they have health department issues, and they can't have all these, you know, Coke bottles and beer bottles and stuff that have sugar in them, drawing in the bugs, and they don't have the space, right? So that's part of the problem. I think we would have to have different kinds of facilities where people could go and turn in their bottles and get paid on the spot. It would just have to look really different, and the infrastructure of it is kind of complicated. But
They do it in Canada. They have the debt redemption centers. So
Yeah. but they, that product stewardship probably goes across not just, recyclables. It's also for pharmaceuticals and, lots of different products. But
Now it's even complicated.
yeah, it's all complicated. But that, and that's why we're having this today, is just to kind of give everybody, like, it's a lot more complicated than people realize with just walking out to the curb and throwing stuff in a can. And that's why I wanted to have this as a discussion at Metra, so.
So if you take nothing else away from here, there's only 5 things going to your recycle cart, right? Plastic bottles and containers, glass bottles and jars. Let's see if I can do this. Metal cans, clean paper, and clean cardboard. But if
How
you
about
only
the
put those
lid
5,
for the plastic bottle?
you can keep the lid on the plastic bottle.
Everybody will ask that. What about the lid on the bottle?
We accept 1 through 7, and there's some questions about what exactly that is, but the idea is it's so confusing. You want people to try to look at the bottle, figure this, that, and the other, and that's part of the goal of having a new MRF, is they'll be able to address that exact challenge.
So with the plastic, you look at it, and if there's a number and some letters, and it's 1 through 7, you accept all of them, not just 1 and 2.
That's correct.
If it's
1 through 5.
1 through 5.
okay, but you don't want the clamshell.
No, you don't want the single
You want
serve food
things that
service
have a
stuff.
neck and a screw-on lid.
Yeah, prefer bottles. And if you're not sure, as we say, when in doubt, throw it out. Okay, otherwise you'll contaminate the stream. If it gets too complicated, when in doubt, throw it out.
So my husband told me one time that the numbers on the bottom of the plastic, it has nothing to do with recycling, Jane. It's what type of plastic it's made of. I'm like,
But some of those
that blew my
numbers
mind.
say
I'm
are
like, that's the
recyclable
same.
and others are not. You say 1 through 5, it's okay, and 6 and up is not.
Right. And if you're not sure, throw it away.
Just check it.
And quite honestly, there'll be better messaging and a better consistency if we can attract a facility here. That's really, when that happens, then we can be more specific with our messaging. Because I suspect it's going to be think 7 or 8 instead of think 5, but we can't change that right now.
Wait, is it paper?
Yeah.
They also throw a composter
I mean,
on
the
that
other
too.
ones are the plastic buckets.
Think 8 plus organics.
Those are not.
Hey,
Hey,
close.
close.
Nobody's stopping anybody from composting right now.
And they're.
So Dave, I'm still stuck on the fact that we don't have any data to actually tell if we're being successful in recycling it. The more I hear, the more I think it's a waste of time. I don't feel like it's really resolving our issue. Am I wrong?
What issue do you want to resolve?
I want to know that our recycling is actually a success somehow. I want to see data, or I want to know that, like in Orange County, I work in Orange County, I live in Orange County. I want to know that what I'm putting in my recycle bin is actually following the process and being recycled. But it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like we capture that data. It doesn't sound like we keep it or capture it.
We certainly do. But I can't tell you if I don't know what your household is, but I can tell you what routes we do accept it from. I can tell you which routes are abominable and that material is not getting recycled. But what I can do is tell you is we also have a program in place where we have dedicated resources, we've got dedicated funding to work to improve that messaging. The problem is, if you're doing it right and your neighbor's doing it wrong, it goofs up the whole truck, right? So that doesn't mean that it's not worthwhile. It means that we have to work and improve what the neighbor is doing, what everybody is doing. And we have, very lengthy discussions and plans and efforts that we're putting into, some people are simply going to have to take the recycle card away because they ain't getting it. And but that's a longer term plan. There's no switch that we can turn to make it change. And there's a lot of value in that material. So we've got to make the effort to capture it and recycle it, because if it goes into a hill in the ground, it stays there forever. If it gets put into the MRF and it gets pulled back out, it enters the economy. It can get continually recycled. It creates jobs and it creates benefits. So, I have to look at that. I personally look at that positive side of this and say, Do I want it sitting as a stinking, festering pile of garbage, or do I want it as an economic engine for this region? And I choose the latter.
But at least has a chance if it goes in the
And
recycling.
if we're not working on these programs and we throw up our hands and give up, then, you know, the cheapest way to handle all this is put it in the landfill. But is it true, is it truly the best, and is it truly the lowest cost in the long run? You know, economics is all about where you draw your boundaries. If your boundaries is you're just worried about what the tipping fee is, then it's going to be the landfill. But if you're worried about the impacts, the social impacts, the economic impacts, jobs, the rest of that, then we need to be recycling. And we need to be developing these programs and continually improve them, because it is not completely straightforward. Not everybody gets it. So we've got to help them get it.
Okay.
That's Jessica's job.
Well, you guys.
And Cindy too. You know, we're going to help get this message out.
I say thank you very much it's a good discussion. Thanks for giving us a little time. Joe, thanks for